successful wellness is dependent upon a healthy and positive perception of the world. Tony Campolo is a professor at Eastern University, professor of sociology, and he goes around the world speaking. He's written quite a number of books as well. He was on a speaking engagement in Hawaii, and he showed up in Hawaii and he was supposed to speak the next day. He was really tired and exhausted, but he decided that he couldn't sleep that night because he was so excited and his body clock was off. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, Tony Campolo gets up out of his bed and he decides to go and try and find some bacon and eggs. So Tony Campolo leaves the hotel where he's at, and he's walking around the streets of Honolulu. And he's trying to find that place where he can get a little bit of a bite to eat. And he notices that every place is closed except for one lonely, grungy looking diner down in a back alley. Well, he decides, I'm hungry enough, I've got nothing else I'm gonna do, so he goes into this diner. And there's nobody in this diner but a fat guy behind the counter. He goes up to the diner and he wants some bacon and eggs, but he's looking around and this guy behind the counter says, "What do you want?" in a very gruff voice. And he said, well, I tell you what. And he spied some donuts that were under a glass cover over in the corner. He said, "Just give me a donut and a cup of black coffee." So Tony sits down and he has the donut and his coffee and he's eating that when all of a sudden 8 to 9 prostitutes walk in to that diner after their evening's work, and they sit down right next to Tony. And he's about ready to get up and leave because he's just a little bit uncomfortable. They're rather loud and obnoxious. But before he does, he hears one of those prostitutes turn to another and said, "Hey, you know what? Tomorrow's my birthday. Yeah, I'm going to be 39 years old." And one of the other prostitutes said to her, so what do you want, a birthday cake? You want me to celebrate that for you? You want me to sing happy birthday for you? And she says, "Nah, you're right. Why should I have a birthday cake? Why should I have a birthday party? I've never had one before in my life anyway." Well, Tony decides to just stay there for a little while until they leave. And in short order, they do leave. And Tony asks the guy behind the counter, "So, do these gals come in here every night?" He said, "Yeah, every night about 3 o'clock. And he said, "Who's the one that's birthday's tomorrow?" He said, "Agnes." Tony says to the guy behind the counter, "What do you say we throw a birthday party for Agnes tomorrow night?" And so Tony said, "Why don't you prepare a cake and I'll get all the decorations." And the guy behind the counter yells back to his wife, who's apparently in the back room. He says, "Hey, this guy wants to throw a birthday party for Agnes." She says, "That's great. We'll have it ready for you tomorrow night." And so Tony left the diner that day, or that night. 2:30 the next night, Tony comes back. He's got all sorts of decorations. He's got crepe paper. He's got a big sign that says, "Happy Birthday, Agnes." He brings it in, and they decorate that place from one side to the next, and it's just filled with these decorations. And he come to find out that the guy behind the counter's name was Harry, and Harry had the birthday cake all ready to go. So Harry had also called practically all of the prostitutes in Honolulu, and he had them come in beforehand and hide in there before Agnes and her partner would come in. Well, they hid. And as soon as Agnes came in, that door flew open. They all jumped up and shouted, "Happy birthday, Agnes." And Agnes was flabbergasted. She couldn't believe what was happening for her. And she almost stumbled back in surprise at what was happening. And so not knowing what to do, somebody said, "Well, blow out the candles, Agnes," because the birthday cake was right in front of her with 39 gloriously lit candles. And so she blew out the candles. And Harry said, "Go ahead and have a piece." And she paused. And she looked down at that birthday cake and she said, "Harry, do you mind if we don't cut this right now? Don't cut it right away?" He said, "That's fine." She said, I want to take this somewhere, and I'll be right back. He was pretty confused, but he said, go ahead, we'll be here when you get back. She took that birthday cake down the street. She lived just down the street with her mother. She took it into her mother's place, her home. She said, look, Ma, I got a real birthday cake. A birthday cake with candles. I got my birthday party. So she came back, and while she was coming back, everybody else there was unsure of what to do. And of course, they looked around and they didn't know what to do. And then suddenly they turned to Tony, and all eyes were on him. And he said, okay, let's pray. So there at 3:30 in the morning in Honolulu, a diner full of prostitutes, Tony Campolo leads these people in a prayer. And he prays for Agnes' health and well-being. And then Agnes came back, and they enjoyed that birthday party, and it was a wonderful event. Now, you know, Tony Campolo didn't write about what happened afterward, and I can't really know what happened afterward with Agnes and those people there. But before Tony left, and he said that prayer, Harry said, hey, I didn't know you were a pastor. And he said, what church do you belong to? He said, I belong to a church that throws birthday parties for prostitutes at 3:30 in the morning. And he said, nah, there ain't such a church. If there was, I belong to it. And that was that. That was that. Now again, I don't know what happened after that. But you know what? I can only guess that what Tony did for those people, not just for Agnes, but for everybody else there, changed their entire perception of the world. You know, these women and Harry himself and probably his wife probably had a perception of the world as being a less than loving place, a less than an opportune place, and they were probably very negative minded in terms of their scope in the world. But I can only guess that Tony changed their mind. And that gets to this particular key. Perception makes a world of difference. And we can't succeed at anything, much less wellness, unless we have a positive perception of the world and what the world can be. You know, a lot of people look at the world and say, why should I even bother trying to exercise? Why should I bother trying to eat right? Right? You hear this, don't you? Well, if we create that perception that there is hope, if there is a better way of doing things, it can make all the difference in the world. Cognitive behavioral theory is a theory that we study in the mental health counseling program and is applied in many practices today. And the fundamental idea behind this is that what we think or believe determines our behavior. And that's what perception is all about. If we can change people's perceptions, we will change behavior. If we can change what they think, we will change how they live. If we can help them see a different and a better way, there will be a different and a better way.